The training dome of Zelthar Academy hummed with contained energy. Gravity generators pulsed beneath the metal floor, pressing twice the standard weight onto every movement. Alien cadets stood in rows, their scaled or luminous skin glistening under white-blue light. Each species in the hall, scaled Trivans, silicon-bodied Valeri, and the towering Vrakesh, watched the lone human at the end of the formation with thinly veiled amusement. Lyra Hale adjusted her stance quietly. The boots issued to her were meant for claws, not human feet. Her breath came steady, measured. The air smelled faintly of ozone and iron, comfortingly familiar to someone raised where the rain could corrode steel overnight. At the far end, Commander Vrakesh turned his 4 eyes toward her. His frame was monstrous, his armor grown from living chitin that flexed with every breath. "Human," he said, voice amplified across the chamber. "You arrive late. Again." Lyra didn't speak. She simply looked at him, chin slightly raised, expression calm. "You stand among soldiers of 100 worlds," Vrakesh continued. "Each has earned their place through trials your kind cannot comprehend. You, however, have earned only curiosity. Let us test whether you have anything more." The cadets stirred. Low chuckles rippled through the ranks. Lyra caught fragments of whispering. "Deathworlder? More like Petworlder. She'll faint before the first cut." Vrakesh extended a hand toward the wall console. A plasma blade unfolded from the dais in front of him, its edge a thin shimmer of energy. He walked slowly toward her, the blade leaving a faint ion trail in the air. "Step forward," he ordered. Lyra did. Her motion was precise, smooth. The weight of the gravity barely showed in her steps. "This is the blood endurance trial," the commander declared to the watching cadets. "Every warrior here has bled for the Dominion. Pain teaches obedience, humility, strength. Let us see if the human body has any of those." He stopped in front of her, towering over her by nearly a meter. "Extend your hand." Lyra lifted her right palm. Her fingers didn't tremble. The air around the blade shimmered, distorting her reflection in its glow. Vrakesh's tone dropped lower. "You will not hide your weakness behind silence. You will bleed and you will react. That is an order." The blade touched her skin. A thin red line opened, blood beating instantly. The scent of iron filled the air. Lyra watched it drip once onto the metal floor, steady, rhythmic, then nothing. No cry, no flinch, just the slow exhale of someone measuring her pulse. The commander waited. Seconds passed. His blade remained still against her hand. When he finally withdrew it, the gash continued to bleed freely, but her gaze never wavered. Around them, murmurs spread like static. "Did she go into shock?" "No." "She's watching him." Vrakesh frowned. "You feel nothing?" Lyra met his eyes. "On my world," she said quietly, "children learn to stop the bleeding before they learn to read." The room froze. Her voice wasn't defiant. It was factual. That made it worse. The commander's mandibles twitched. "You mock our traditions?" She shook her head once. "No, I'm respecting them. You said pain teaches. I've already graduated." A few cadets shifted uncomfortably. The oxygen in the chamber seemed thinner. Vrakesh circled her slowly. "You misunderstand strength. What you mistake for endurance is simply numbness. The human nervous system is primitive. Its limits will show soon enough." He touched a panel on his wrist. The gravity surged. Every cadet in the hall bent under the new pressure. Boots scraped metal. A few stumbled. Lyra's knees bent slightly, but she steadied herself. Her breath slowed to match the weight pressing on her chest. She imagined the storms of Earth's wastelands, the heavy air thick with dust. Her father's voice shouting through the wind, "Hold your ground!" Lyra Vrakesh watched the tremor in her legs, waiting for collapse. When it didn't come, his voice turned harsh. "You were brought here as a test subject, not an equal. You will break so that we may measure you properly." Lyra tilted her head. "Then measure this, Commander. How long silence lasts when words fail." The cadets went completely still. Vrakesh's pupils constricted. He raised the blade again, but this time she didn't offer her hand. She simply stood, eyes locked on his. Something in that gaze, steady, unblinking, unnerved him more than any defiance. Her blood had smeared across her palm, dark against pale skin. Slowly, deliberately, she clenched her fist, forcing more to spill, letting it drip onto the training floor. The stain widened, a red mark under alien light. "You ordered me to bleed," she said evenly. "Now I have. Are you satisfied?" Her tone was calm, but every syllable cut deeper than the wound. Rakesh lowered the blade without realizing it. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. The sensors on the wall blinked, scanning vitals. A robotic voice reported, "Human subject, pain threshold, exceeded calibration. Cortisol stable. Heart rate normal." The commander turned sharply toward the screen. Impossible. Even Valari soldiers trembled during that test. He looked back at her. "What are you?" Lyra allowed the faintest curve of a smile. "Adaptation." For a moment, the only sound was the soft drip of blood. The tension in the air thickened until it felt physical. Then she reached for the offered cloth on the dais, wrapped it around her palm, and stepped back into formation. No dramatics, no speech, just quiet efficiency. As she stood among the aliens again, whispers filled the hall. She didn't even blink. Commander looked afraid. Humans are different. Rakesh turned toward the rest. "Class dismissed," he said, but his voice lacked its usual authority. The cadets filed out silently, glancing at Lyra as they passed. None met her eyes for long. When the hall was nearly empty, Rakesh stopped her. "Do not mistake endurance for victory. Your body will betray you soon." Lyra wiped her hand clean, meeting his gaze once more. "Pain betrays only those who fear it." She left before he could respond. Outside, the corridors of the academy stretched like veins of metal light. She walked slowly, feeling her heartbeat echo against the high gravity. The wound had already clotted. The pain pulsed dully, grounding her. For the first time since arriving in this alien place, she felt something familiar, silence after struggle. Earth had taught her to survive. The academy would learn what survival really meant. Behind her, Commander Vrakesh stood alone in the training hall, staring at the blood mark on the floor. The red stain shimmered faintly under the light, refusing to fade even as the floor's nanobots tried to clean it. It remained there, a defiant scar on the immaculate surface, a reminder that the galaxy's deadliest soldier was not born in a laboratory or bred in crystal chambers. She came from a world that tried to kill her every day, and failed, and she smiled when ordered to bleed. The next morning, the gravity chamber pulsed with the low thrum of energized air. The floor shimmered faintly, every molecule trembling under the weight of magnetic tension. Cadets gathered again, nervous, whispering. The event from yesterday had already become rumor. Some said the human girl felt no pain. Others said she was engineered, part machine. Lyra Hale walked through the line of cadets without looking at them. Her uniform was newly pressed, her wounded hand neatly bandaged. No trace of defiance showed, only calm precision. At the far end of the chamber, Commander Vrakesh stood before a glowing console. His voice was sharp as static. Yesterday was a preliminary test. Today we measure the limits of this Deathworld experiment. His four eyes narrowed on Lyra. Step into the central field. She obeyed without hesitation. The circle of light closed around her. Above, a transparent dome slid into place, sealing her inside the gravity field. Rakesh raised the gravity level by increments. The alien cadets braced themselves instinctively, though the effect wasn't directed at them. Inside the dome, the human's posture remained composed. 5 gravs, he said. Barely enough to crush the joints of a Trivan soldier. The sensors ticked upward. Her hair clung to her forehead as sweat began to bead. She focused on her breathing, counting the rhythm of each inhale. Pain was familiar. It told her she was alive. At 10 gravs, the floor dented beneath her boots. Her muscles strained. Veins stood out on her arms. The pressure made even air feel heavy. "Report your condition," Vrakesh ordered. Lyra's voice came steady. "Standing," he adjusted the controls again. 15. A faint vibration shook the chamber. The alien cadets murmured, shifting uneasily. A Valari recruit whispered, "At 15, our armor starts to buckle." Inside, Lyra's knees quivered, but she refused to kneel. Her heartbeat hammered behind her ribs. The image of her father flashed before her, the wasteland storms, the endless training. The words he repeated whenever she stumbled. Don't fight the world, become part of it. She straightened slowly, rolling her shoulders back against the invisible weight. Rakesh leaned closer to the console. Remarkable. Still conscious? His tone dripped with disbelief. Tell me, human, what drives you to endure? Fear? Pride? Or simple ignorance of pain? Lyra looked at him through the glass. None of those. Just practice. The cadets stifled their gasps. Practice. On Earth, she said, each word deliberate. Gravity is not a number. It's a lesson. Our oceans pull us down. Our storms bury us alive. You think this is pressure? This is a memory. The silence that followed carried weight of its own. Rakesh's claws tapped the controls again. The field shifted hue from blue to crimson, the temperature rising abruptly. Heat waves shimmered. Let's see how memories help you now. The temperature climbed beyond comfort. The metal floor glowed faintly orange, the air thick enough to burn in the lungs. Lyra's breath turned shallow, but her gaze didn't waver. Her mind drifted back to her mother, to nights spent near the lava vents of their colony outpost. The heat then had been worse, and her mother had laughed, saying, "If the air tries to melt you, breathe slower than it burns." She followed that rhythm now. Inhale, hold, release. The commander watched the monitors, frustration edging into his expression. Impossible. He slammed his hand against the console. The gravity dropped suddenly, but the heat intensified further. The change sent her staggering forward, disoriented by the sudden freedom of weight. Her knees hit metal, but she caught herself before falling completely. Rakesh's voice boomed. Still smiling? She raised her head. Her lips curved faintly. Trying to, the cadets broke their silence. Some whispered in awe, others stared, unsure if they should pity or fear her. Rakesh stepped closer to the dome, his face inches from the glass. Pain defines life. You humans claim to have conquered it, but all you've done is numb yourselves. That's not strength. It's absence. Lyra pushed herself to standing again, muscles trembling, skin flushed from the heat. Maybe, but absence of comfort isn't absence of life. He struck the console again, cutting the heat entirely. Steam hissed through vents as the dome retracted. Out! He barked. She stepped forward, her uniform scorched at the edges. The room reeked of burned metal and ozone. Rakesh pointed toward the cadets. Observe. The human has no threshold. She will push herself until her cells rupture, until death. That is not endurance, it's recklessness. Lyra wiped the sweat from her brow. Maybe that's the difference between us. You stop when it hurts. We stop when it matters. For a long moment, no one spoke. Even the hum of the generators felt distant. Rakesh's mandibles flexed, the first sign of unease she had ever seen in him. You think words will elevate you? That philosophy compensates for weakness? Lyra met his glare with quiet intensity. No, but they remind me why I'm still here when I shouldn't be. Her tone was almost gentle, but something about it pierced the commander's armor more effectively than any weapon. He turned sharply, signaling an assistant to deactivate the system. This test is over. As the cadets dispersed, Lyra lingered, kneeling briefly beside the scuffed floor. Her fingertips brushed the faint burn marks her boots had left in the alloy. It was proof, not of pain conquered, but of having endured it without surrender. When she finally rose, Rakesh spoke again, lower this time. Why didn't you cry out? She looked back. Because you expected me to. He stared at her in silence, unable to find an answer. Lyra walked out of the training hall, her posture steady though her limbs ached. The corridor beyond was cool and silent. She could feel every heartbeat, every tremor of muscle, but it didn't weaken her resolve. It sharpened it. At the junction outside, a group of younger cadets stood waiting. The smallest one, scales faintly green, whispered, "Does it really not hurt?" Lyra stopped beside him. Of course it hurts, she said softly. That's how you know you're still alive. Then she kept walking. Behind her, the cadets exchanged looks that bordered on reverence. None of them noticed Rakesh watching from the shadows, his expression unreadable. Later, when the chamber was empty, he returned to the console, replaying the sensor data. Every reading, pulse, respiration, thermal index, remained within survivable range. She should have collapsed 5 minutes in, yet she'd lasted nearly 30. He watched the playback again, pausing on her final words. "We stop when it matters." Something unfamiliar stirred in him. Curiosity, perhaps, or the first trace of respect. Outside the viewport, the gas giant Varus 9 burned bright orange against the void, storms raging across its endless clouds. A death world in miniature, beautiful and violent, and somewhere beneath its reflection, a single human walked the corridors of the academy, bleeding, breathing, enduring, while the galaxy slowly began to realize what kind of species it had let inside its walls. The academy's main hall was silent that morning. Rows of alien cadets stood rigid beneath the arching ceiling of polished alloy. Even the air felt cautious, as though holding its breath. The incident from the gravity chamber had spread through every rank. The Deathworld Girl had endured 15 gravs and blistering heat without collapsing. Now, Commander Vrakesh demanded one final test, the trial of nerves. Lyra Hale entered without hesitation. Her expression was composed, but a faint tension lingered at the corners of her eyes. She knew the commander wasn't done. Men like him couldn't accept mystery. They had to break what they didn't understand. Vrakesh stood beside a massive control pillar, claws tapping against glass. "Cadets," he announced, "today's demonstration will clarify the truth behind yesterday's anomaly. Pain is measurable. Endurance is finite. We will see where the human threshold ends." The chamber lights dimmed as the floor split into 8 circular panels, each lined with conduits that pulsed faint blue. Lyra recognized the setup from observation logs, a neural interference grid, designed to simulate direct trauma through controlled electrical impulses. For most species, even minimal exposure triggered collapse within seconds. "Step onto the central plate," Vrakesh ordered. Lyra obeyed. The cold surface vibrated faintly beneath her boots. She took a slow breath, exhaling through her nose to steady her pulse. "Begin at 20%, the commander said. A low hum filled the room. Static danced along the walls. The charge crawled through her nerves like a whisper of fire. Her jaw clenched, but she didn't move. 40. The hum deepened. Her hands twitched involuntarily. She focused on rhythm. One heartbeat, one breath, then another. Pain wasn't the enemy. Panic was. Vrakesh's tone hardened. 60. Sparks leapt from the panel. Her vision blurred for an instant. The taste of copper filled her mouth. Muscles seized, released, then steadied again. The commander leaned forward. "You can stop any time, human. Simply admit what you are. Fragile flesh pretending to be iron." Lyra's voice came rough but clear. "If you need me to stop, Commander, just say so." A ripple of murmurs passed through the cadets. Vrakesh's jaw tightened. He turned the dial further. 80. The shock hit like a blade drawn through every nerve. Her breath caught, body locking for a heartbeat, then she exhaled through the tremor. The bandage on her palm tore slightly. A thin line of blood resurfaced. She watched it with detached focus. It grounded her, reminded her of Earth, of storms that fried entire forests, of the hum of static before lightning. Her mind wandered briefly to her brother, who had once dared her to touch a live wire back home. She'd done it out of pride. He'd laughed when she only flinched. "You don't fear the jolt," he'd said. "You learn its rhythm, still standing," one of the Valeri cadets whispered. At 80, Vrakesh ignored him. 100, the chamber lights flared white. Every monitor screamed with data. Neural overload should have rendered her unconscious instantly. Instead, Lyra staggered once, caught herself, and stood upright again. Her hair clung to her skin. Her breathing came slow but deliberate. She looked up at the commander through the haze of energy. Was that it? He stared at her, momentarily speechless. The monitors still blinked in confusion, her heart rate irregular but steady, adrenaline stabilized far below panic threshold. Vrakesh's pride cracked. He slammed his hand against the pillar. Enough! The current ceased. Silence fell, broken only by the faint hiss of cooling circuits. Lyra stood in the center, smoke curling from the edges of her sleeves. She raised her head. Her eyes were clear. The faintest trace of a smile lingered on her lips. The commander approached slowly. "You think this makes you powerful?" he asked quietly. "You endured pain, yes, but what did it gain you?" "Suffering is meaningless without purpose." Lyra's answer was calm. "Then you've never truly suffered." He froze. "Explain." She stepped closer, voice soft but cutting. "You test pain as if it's a weapon. On my world, it's just part of the weather. You run from it. We build homes inside it. You worship strength. We survive because we must. That's the difference, Commander. You choose your trials. Ours never end." The hall remained utterly still. Even the ventilation hum seemed to vanish. Rakesh looked into her eyes, and for the first time something flickered there. Doubt. "What are you, human?" Lyra's faint smile deepened. "A mirror." "You don't like what you see." He turned away abruptly, retreating toward the console as if distance could reassert control. But control was gone. The cadet's eyes followed her now, not him. The hierarchy had shifted. Imperceptibly but permanently. Then came the whispering again, soft and spreading like wildfire. "She took 100. She smiled through it. Deathworld blood." Rakesh's voice cut through, lower, almost strained. "This demonstration is concluded." Class dismissed, but no one moved. The silence stretched. Finally, Lyra broke it herself. "Commander," she said quietly, "I didn't come here to prove I can bleed. I came here to see if your galaxy knows what it means to heal." He turned slowly. "And what did you find?" Her gaze didn't waver. "You're still learning." For a long heartbeat, he said nothing. Then he nodded once, not in surrender, but in acknowledgement. "Perhaps we are." Lyra stepped off the platform. The floor was warm under her boots. As she passed the cadets, none mocked her this time. They watched in silence, their expressions uncertain, some fearful, some respectful. Outside the hall, the corridor opened toward the vast window overlooking Varus 9. The gas giant burned like a living sun, its storms twisting endlessly. She stopped there, letting the light wash across her face. The faint reflection of the red clouds mirrored in her eyes. Footsteps echoed behind her. It was Vrakesh. His tone lacked its usual sharpness. "Human," he said, "the Academy is reevaluating your classification. You may no longer train with the standard cadet corps." Lyra didn't turn. "Because I broke the system?" "Because the system cannot measure you." Silence lingered between them. Then she said softly, "That's how it starts. First they measure us, then they learn from us." Vrakesh regarded her quietly. "You may think you've won something today, but understand this. You have changed how they look at you. Some will admire you. Others will fear you." Lyra finally faced him. "Fear is a beginning. It means they've stopped laughing." He studied her for a moment, then gave a slow nod. "You remind me of something ancient. A creature that refused to yield even when it should have. Perhaps humanity will teach this galaxy what endurance truly means." Her smile was faint, but genuine. "Maybe we already have." He left without another word. Lyra watched him go, then turned back toward the swirling storms beyond the window. The reflection of lightning flickered across her face, chaotic, beautiful, alive. Somewhere in the academy below, whispers grew into stories. Cadets told of the human girl who stood through fire and current, who smiled when ordered to bleed. The legend spread faster than transmission speed, from training halls to command fleets. They called her the Deathworld Girl, and in every retelling, her smile became sharper, more haunting, a quiet reminder that pain had found its master. In a galaxy that worshipped power, one human had redefined it. She didn't conquer their machines. She conquered their belief in limits. And somewhere deep within the walls of Zelthar Academy, the red stain from her first trial still refused to fade, a mark that even the cleaning nanites couldn't erase, a scar the galaxy would remember. The days after the trial of nerves changed the pulse of Zelthar Academy. The corridors felt quieter, Cadet conversations stopped mid-sentence when Lyra passed. Some watched her with awe, others with unease, as though she carried something contagious, something that could not be explained, measured, or replicated. The whispers had already spread beyond the station. Reports labeled her performance as statistical error, neural aberration, or miscalibrated equipment. Yet none of those terms erased the image now living in every cadet's mind, the human who smiled through agony. Commander Vrakesh, once the voice of absolute authority, had grown distant. His lectures were shorter, more restrained. The sharp certainty in his tone had dulled, replaced by thought he didn't want to acknowledge. Still, the Dominion Council demanded one final evaluation. They wanted proof that the incident was reproducible, or that it was a fluke. Lyra was summoned at dawn. She arrived in the High Observatory, a chamber overlooking Varus 9's orange storms. The circular room glowed with cold light. Vrakesh stood beside a group of alien officials, their holographic insignias marking them as council observers. "Cadet Hale," said one, a crystalline being whose voice shimmered like vibrating glass. "You have demonstrated exceptional tolerance beyond recorded metrics. We are here to determine whether such endurance poses risk." Lyra inclined her head slightly. "You're wondering if endurance makes humans dangerous." The crystalline official hesitated, then nodded. "Correct." Vrakesh folded his arms, studying her carefully. "The council has prepared a final test, not of pain this time, but of control." He gestured to a console. The floor beneath Lyra illuminated, forming a holographic simulation platform, the air filled with the sound of wind and static. The projections stabilized into a battlefield, an alien wasteland under a red sky. "This is the psychometric arena," Vrakesh said. "Your neural signals will control the environment. The more focused your mind, the more stability it retains. If you lose control, the field reacts. Violently." Lyra stepped onto the glowing grid. "And what's the objective?" "Survive," he replied simply. The simulation activated. The world around her blurred into shape. Mountains of jagged stone, rivers of molten metal, air dense with heat. Echoes of alien screams filled the background, programmed from centuries of recorded wars. Lyra stood still for a moment, letting her senses adapt. The landscape shimmered faintly, reflecting her pulse and thought patterns. When her heartbeat steadied, the storm overhead calmed. "Begin Phase 1, said the council observer. Figures materialized across the ridgeline, replicas of Dominion soldiers, weapons drawn. Their movements were fluid, too precise for simple illusion. Lyra's voice was low. "You want to see if fear breaks concentration?" "Precisely," Vrakesh replied. The first soldier lunged forward. Lyra didn't react with violence. She sidestepped, using the terrain's gravity shift to unbalance the attacker. The simulation bent subtly with her focus, warping the rock under its feet. The soldier fell, dissolving into static dust. The others advanced. She moved through them with efficient restraint, deflecting, redirecting, surviving. The simulation flared as her mental readings spiked, but the field stabilized quickly. "She's controlling the system," one observer whispered, "not reacting, shaping it." Vrakesh watched silently, his expression unreadable. Minutes stretched into half an hour. The environment shifted with each emotional pulse. Anger brought wind, calm turned it still again. The test was designed to expose instability, yet Lyra adapted instinctively. Finally, the council leader raised a hand. "Phase 2, increase resistance." The sky darkened. The ground cracked open, releasing a wave of molten energy that surged toward her. Lyra raised her arm reflexively, then stopped. Instead of resisting, she lowered it, exhaled slowly, and let the current pass through the simulation untouched. The molten wave divided around her, harmless, splitting the terrain into two glowing arcs. Her calm rippled outward, collapsing the chaos back into stillness. The observers exchanged uneasy glances. One murmured, "She understands the system's core loop. She's syncing with it." Rakesh's claws tapped against his forearm guard. "Enough. End simulation." But before he could finalize the shutdown, the projection flickered. A faint voice echoed through the chamber. Not alien, not mechanical. It came from the simulation's core. "Commander Rakesh," it said, distorted yet clear. "She's overriding command priority." The console lights flared. For 3 seconds, Lyra's mind held full authority over the psychometric field. The storm overhead froze mid-flash, molten rivers halted in mid-air, and time itself seemed to pause. Then she spoke, not loud, but steady. "You taught me to endure pain. But you never asked why humans do it. It's not for dominance. It's because surviving is the only way we remember who we are." The simulation deactivated with a low boom. Energy dispersed, leaving the observatory silent. The council holograms flickered uncertainly. "Commander," one began, "did she just—" "Yes," Rakesh interrupted quietly. "She just took control of a system no non-Dominion mind has ever stabilized." He turned toward her, expression neither angry nor proud, only contemplative. "You've made your point." Lyra met his gaze. "So have you." He tilted his head slightly. "And what lesson did you learn, human?" "That pain isn't the test," she said. "The real test is what you do when you're the one holding the switch." Rakesh stared at her for a long moment, then let out a sound halfway between a growl and a sigh. "You're not a soldier," he said. "You're a reminder." Of what? He looked toward the swirling storms beyond the window. Of how fragile strength truly is. The council observers exchanged hushed words, concluding the trial was complete. Their holograms faded one by one until only Lyra and the commander remained. He approached her slowly. "They will talk about this for years," he said. "Some will fear you. Others will try to imitate you. But they'll never understand the part that matters." Lyra's tone was soft. "And what part is that?" He hesitated, then smiled faintly, barely perceptible. "You endured because you chose to, not because you had to." She inclined her head slightly. "Choice is what makes us human." Outside, lightning tore through Varus 9's upper clouds, illuminating the chamber in gold and crimson. The reflection painted both their faces, one alien, one human, united by the same quiet understanding. Rakesh stepped back, his voice quieter than before. "Your file will read, endurance beyond classification, but unofficially." He paused. "You taught this academy more than any of us expected." Lyra turned toward the window, watching the storms shift like living veins. "Then maybe I've passed your real test, Commander." He nodded once. "You have." When she left the observatory, the corridor lights dimmed behind her, one by one, as if the station itself bowed in acknowledgement. The cadets who passed her that evening no longer whispered. They saluted. Later in the training dome, Rakesh returned alone. The floor where her blood had once marked the alloy still bore a faint red hue. He crouched, touching it gently. The nanobots had tried for days to erase the stain. They couldn't. He smiled to himself, low and bitter. "Some lessons," he murmured, "aren't meant to be erased." And far beyond Varus 9, in distant corners of the galaxy, the first stories began spreading through command channels and rumor threads about the Deathworld Girl who smiled when ordered to bleed, who took control of a machine built to test gods. They would call her the beginning of humanity's awakening.